Voice of Commencis'e hoş geldin. Podcast'i dinlemeden önce birkaç saniyeni alalım. Commencis, büyük veri, kullanıcı deneyimi, yazılım ve bulut bilişim alanındaki çözümleriyle dünyada önde gelen markaların dijital dönüşümlerine öncülük ediyor. Detaylı bilgi için commencis.com'u ziyaret edebilirsin. İyi dinlemeler.
Hi Josh, thanks for joining or accept our invitation today. We have a pleasure with you to have you here. Today we are here on behalf of our company, which is called Commencis. My name is Oytun. Let me introduce myself a little bit. I'm working as an engineering manager for the backend team. And we have approximately 20 backend engineers working with us. And I have Emre today with me, who organized this interview, actually. And Emre, do you have any words for introducing yourself for the beginning?
Hi. Sure. My name is Josh Long. I work on the Spring team. I'm a developer advocate on the Spring team, and just very happy to meet y'all.
Yeah, thank you. And Emre, do you have a few words here?
Yeah. Hi, Josh. First things first. I'm very happy and honored to get that exception for this invitation. Thank you for your time. And good morning, and happy New Year.
Likewise to you as well.
Thank you.
If I continue, we are here developing applications for a wide range of domains, including banking, airlines, steel, insurance, and our stack consists of mostly Java and Spring framework in most of our applications. And today I would like to explain a bit our intention today and give you a bit of background info what we are aiming with this online event. So last year we have initiated an in-house podcast content publishing in our company, which we are publishing the content in Spotify, which allowed us to be able to share our knowledge and experience that we gained during our projects, trainings, meetups, and events on various topics. So, and Emre had the idea to invite you for talking about some hot topics and new technologies, and to find out what you think about them, and maybe give some advices to our developers and our teams. And we would like to have this in a conversation mood. The first question I would like to ask, maybe you may know, in Turkey, the Developer Advocate title is not a well-known title, and we are not too much aware what a Developer Advocate does, and what is the difference between a traditional software engineer, and the software architect with developer advocate. So if you can give us an insight about it and how to become a developer advocate, and suggestions and so on, we would be happy to hear it.
Well, yeah. So a developer advocate is a fairly new thing worldwide. It's not just in Turkey where it's relatively unknown. It came from organizations that wanted to get developers to engage with their platform. And so this is, of course, a really new thing in the history of computers, in the history of, the last 100 years. It's maybe 30 years where we've had people that are acted like developer advocates. Microsoft and Apple, very famously, they had people that acted like developer advocates. And the goal was to get people that were out there that could both represent the community, that could be the voice, the connection with the community to the engineering group working on things like the Windows operating system, but they could also help bring what the engineering team is doing to the community, right? So it's a two-way channel. It's a person that acts as a liaison or a connection between these two different groups and tries to represent as best as possible their different constraints. So what that means in practice for me is I work on Spring. I love Spring. I've been using it for almost 2 decades. It's almost as long as it's been out, basically. And that Spring has been around for 18 or more years. So I'm a big fan, and it's helped me a lot. I loved it. It helped me succeed in business and in industry, where I would have otherwise had to waste a lot of time. And so I was always a big fan of it. and I had written a few books. I gave some presentations. I sent a lot of code. I sent a lot of pull requests and worked on the Spring integration and Spring Batch and various other projects as an open source contributor way back in the 2000 to 2010 era, right? That first decade of the new century. And because of that, when in 2010, they had this new job opening available, and they'd never had a developer advocate, so they invited me to do that because I was already doing that. I was already writing code and working on the projects, but I was also giving presentations and writing books and participating in the community discussion, right? So it's a really interesting job. And at first it was big companies, right? Big companies had developer advocates because they're trying to get the larger community to understand and work with and engage with their platform. But now, in 2020, 10 plus years later, I see all over the place medium-sized organizations have developer advocates internally, right, inside the company. Because again, if you're large enough, if you're an organization with enough projects, you will already start to see that things become inconsistent, right? And this creates operational complexity. And so organizations hire developer advocates to act as the liaison between sort of whatever the architecture group is doing or whatever the platform group is doing and the rest of the organization. So developer advocacy is becoming more common, and it's just a great way to get people to have a common dialogue, to have a common way of describing and thinking about how things are done in the organization. So I see it a lot more now, especially as we move to microservices and so on. And of course, everybody has an API these days, right? In 2020, it's very common to have APIs. And so for any company that has an API, not just a platform, but any kind of SaaS API, they will also typically have a developer advocate because, again, you want to get people to engage with your API, right? That's a very interesting thing to think about. The customer is the programmer, not the mobile phone buyer or the computer buyer or whatever, right? Different audience. Does that help? Does that make it clear a little bit?
Yeah. It made it a little bit clear, and we are wondering what actually the difference between an architect, because most of the times the architects are doing similar things, as far as I know. So, how do you see the differences between an architect and an advocate?
That's a great question. So, stepping back a little bit, when you ask engineering leaders all around the world today, the single most valuable skill that they can ask their employees or their people to pick up, to learn, to acquire, it is communication. It is the ability to articulate your idea, to work with a team, to be a part of a collaborative process. And so that's very important. It doesn't matter what you're doing. Actually, if you think about it, it's really a matter of ratios, right? The CTO today, their job is to connect the technology part of the organization with the business. And so the skill that they have is collaboration, it is communication, right? And this is a skill that anybody can pick up and they should pick up. So when you think about CTOs, when you think about architects, when you think about developer advocates, it's just a stronger inclination towards communication. It's a stronger inclination towards collaboration, right? Architects they're going to be more prescriptive of the tech, right? It is the developer advocate's role usually to take that tech and then turn it into goodwill, to turn it into a conversation that hopefully inspires people to want to use that tech, right? Whereas the developer advocate isn't necessarily, not typically at least, they're not the ones prescribing the technology. They can participate in it, but they don't have the leadership role there when it comes to deciding what we're going to do, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. And what is the suggested path, according to you, to become a developer advocate from a software engineer? What are the steps that needs to be taken during this long path? How do you see that?
Nobody uses Microsoft Windows just because of Windows, right? Like, imagine if somebody said to you, hey, there's this brand new operating system, it didn't exist before, it's called Microsoft Windows, and you can install it and it runs on your computer, but there's no applications available for it, right? If there are no applications available for it, is Microsoft Windows very interesting? I don't think so, right? Windows is interesting only because there are so many applications that you can run on Microsoft Windows. People don't use Windows because of Windows. They use Windows because of, Minecraft or Microsoft Office or video games or whatever, right? There's all sorts of applications. The same is true for the iPhone. If you have an iPhone but there's no applications, then nobody will care. iPhones are not interesting. It's the applications that I can run on the iPhone that are interesting. And so when you think about this idea that applications are the key, right? Applications are the thing that matters there. Then you get a very interesting frame of mind, right? You get a different way of thinking about it. For developers to become developer advocates, it's just a matter of having a focus on that thing that matters, which is delivering business value, delivering software to production, right? Helping people build on the platform to get something in production. And that's, I think, pretty easy. I think most people could do that. I like to think of myself as being, if you think about the Spring team, right? The Spring team, before I came along, they were already very popular. They did not need me, right? I didn't make Spring popular. Spring was already popular before I was hired. And the reason that they were popular was because the Spring team was already able to go out there and to win the war of ideas. You know what I mean? They were able to go out there and argue the perspective that helps people see why you should care about this, why you should care about these technologies. And when you give people a reason to do something, if you inspire them to understand the bigger picture, then they will do the hard work of learning how to do it, right? But you cannot go out there and say you must do this and not explain why. You have to give them a bigger picture, a context, a larger horizon, right? And if they're inspired, then people will do amazing things. So that, I think, is very important. The Spring team was already able to do this. They didn't need me. They were already, if you will, think about it, they were 60% engineers and 40% marketing, right? When I joined, I am 60% marketing and 40% engineer. It's just more of a ratio thing, right? I do more outbound focused activity than I do development. But the skills are the same, and really, it's just a matter of refining skills you should already have as a developer. When I think about what makes a senior engineer, I don't think about any particular technology skill set, right? It's really about your ability to participate in a larger organization, to collaborate. That's what separates a very inexperienced engineer from a senior leader in organizations, right? So I just think it's not that hard. If I can do this, anybody can do this, right? And it's skills that anybody should desire to have anyway. Because, like I say, this is one of the most in-demand things that CTOs and hiring organizations care about, which is, can you play well with others? Can you work in a team? To do that, you need collaboration skills.
Yeah. Okay.
All
Thanks
right, I see. It, yeah, it's a little bit up to passion and the contribution to the community and the open source culture, right? As I understand. So
No,
I'm gonna.
I don't think so. It's not passion, right? I mean, I am passionate, but it is more about, can you give? It's not my passion. It's about arousing that passion in the people in the community, right?
You're creating that passion, the feeding that passion. Yeah, I see that. I just gonna well, I just would like to ask the community differences between the JavaScript and the Java. I mean the Java community and the JavaScript community, and the open source, the differences between the open source cultures. I ask this because as I observe the communities, the two communities, I see that it's like the Java, the backend developers are the little bit conservative in terms of creating live libraries, contribute more on more repos. But the JavaScript part, the JavaScript developers and or advocates, they are creating almost 2 frameworks in a year in terms of web front-end development. And how would you see this difference, and how would you see the JavaScript evolution over the backend technology, over the backend industry? Actually, how this all will be look like in the future?
I think that there's a continuum, a timeline. The Java industry, the Java ecosystem was very volatile. If you went back 20 years ago, I think you would see that the Java ecosystem was just like the JavaScript ecosystem is today, right? There's a Cambrian explosion, right? A evolutionary event where everything was changing and people were trying out different ideas, and Java was exploring new spaces and new ideas and new concepts. And so back then, if you remember, back in the early 2000s, I think that was a very exciting time to be a part of the ecosystem. And actually, that's one of the reasons that I loved Spring, right? One of the first reasons for me to love Spring was Spring gave me this technology that allowed me to glue together all these different approaches to doing things, right? The time at the time, 20 years ago, 18 years ago, if you wanted to build an application, you needed to use either J2EE, which was a very prescriptive, very limited way to build software, right? You could only do 2 or 3 things, and you could only do it a certain way, or you had to build all this stuff and integrate it yourself, right? And so neither one of those was very appealing. Spring came along and said, look, we will provide you a component model, a consistent way to think about building services and software, and we'll integrate lots of things. So you can use, JDO for Java persistence, or Apache OJB, or JDBC template, or iBetas, or JP, Hibernate, or all these different things. It wasn't just one size only. We made it so that you could use all these different approaches. And then same thing for the web framework, right? You could use Spring with struts. You could use it with Spring APC. You could use it with Tapestry. You could use it with Cocoon. You could use it with JSP and servlets. I mean, just all sorts of different integrations. And the reason we had so many different integrations was because at the time, there was just so many new things being developed all the time. And I think as the industry has matured, we have settled. The dust has settled, and so some of the craziness at the lower levels has calmed down. I think you're starting to see that right now in the JavaScript ecosystem, and that's good. Obviously, you want them to find out what the best approach is, because we can agree there are a lot of terrible approaches out there, right? So it would be nice to find a few good ones and settle upon that for the next 5 years. That helps promote stability, which is very important in an organization. The other thing that is that will change the activity levels of a given ecosystem are the sort of environments in which that code is run. So there were new opportunities for Java back in the early 2000s and late 90s. And right now, there are new opportunities for JavaScript. So for example, in the early 2000s, we were starting to look at running Java on the server, right? Remember, at that point, server-side Java wasn't a big thing, right? Most people remember Java from applets. That's the client-side experience, right? Server-side Java, that was a brand new horizon. At the time, there was discussion of being able to run it on the mobile phone with J2ME, right? And so on. So there's all these different places where you could take your Java code. And so that meant that people were trying new things all the time. Server-side, client-side, mobile, etc. There's even an operating system, right? There's an operating system based on Java. I mean, people are doing crazy things that today we're like, oh, well, it's interesting, but I don't think I would do that today. The same is happening in JavaScript right now, and it's also happening to a lesser extent in the Java ecosystem, right? As new opportunities emerge, you'll see a large amount of activity to support those new opportunities. So today, Java and JavaScript run in serverless. Well, that's a new opportunity. That didn't exist when Node.js came out 12 years ago. It didn't exist when Java came out 25 or 26 years ago, right? When you look at client side, right? Client side browser-based applications. JavaScript, you couldn't do very much with JavaScript, back in 2004, right? 2004, the JavaScript ran in the browser and you could do very little. And then we discovered client-side requests, or AJAX, right? And that changed the ecosystem. And suddenly it became very clear that JavaScript could do a lot more if we pushed it to do more, right? So I think it's not about conservative or not. It's just about mature, right? Which one has stabilized the most? And right now, Java is older, so of course it is stabilized. But you'll see today you can run Java in the cloud, you can run it in the server, you can run it in serverless, you can run it on your mobile phone with Android, you can run it in the client. There's desktop applications. There's people run Java on Mars. I mean, it's just everywhere, right? Same thing for JavaScript. You're seeing JavaScript now. There's mobile support. There's server side. It's just everything. So I don't think it's really that it's a conservative or not, right? I think it's just JavaScript is starting to expand to reach the parts of the ecosystem that Java has already reached, and so it looks very volatile, but it's really not. It's just growing, just like Java did.
All right. What about Kotlin? You also in the Kotlin team, right?
I'm not on the Kotlin team officially, but I'm a Google developer expert for Kotlin. So JetBrains and Google have a program. It's kind of like the Java champions. I'm a Java champion, and they have a program that honors people that are active contributors and community members who help advocate for Kotlin. I love Kotlin, and so they made me a Google developer expert, a GDE for Kotlin, and Kotlin's awesome. I think that's a wonderful ecosystem, and that's another example of where the JVM ecosystem is still very active. There's still so many new things happening. And Kotlin, I think, is one of the best parts of it, right? The idea that we can have this new language that has something as revolutionary as coroutines, and that can run in multiple runtimes on the JVM as native code in the browser and WebAssembly. The idea that we can have this language that brings nice features to regular developers running on Java 6 or 7 on Android and so on. It's amazing. That's amazing.
Yeah, for sure. What I would like to ask about that is like when Kotlin is distributed. When Kotlin is in production, let's say, there were discussion that the Kotlin took the place of Java itself because of the they use the GVM, and the Kotlin is like shining star. So, but the Kotlin affected the mobile development as much as I know from Turkey. Whole mobile development is transited from the Android to Kotlin at the moment. But it seems that Java is not affected that much that as they in the beginning the community has expected. What would you think about the Java versus Kotlin comparison? So we're gonna have Java. We're gonna have have both of them always, or we're gonna have to select one.
Yeah, I think that Java will never go away. Java is growing, it's changing. It's a wonderful language and a wonderful ecosystem, and it will always be the number one target for the JVM. That's always been true, right? But right now, Kotlin is the second most used language on the JVM, and that's, like you say, that's driven a lot by Android, right? Android is a very interesting experiment if you think about it, right? The reason that Android and Kotlin have taken off is because there's good backwards compatibility. So I can write code in Kotlin, and that feels like Java 20 or something like this. But
Yes.
but it works, it compiles and runs on Java 7, right? So you can deploy that to the large majority of handsets out there, of mobile phones out there, and they'll be able to run your code. When it comes to on the server side, I think having Kotlin around is wonderful. It creates, it inspires change in Java. But so does Scala, so does Groovy, so do these other languages. So it's very hard to say that Kotlin is going to ever replace Java. I don't think it will. And that's because Java is growing as well. It's just not growing as quickly as Kotlin, which is okay, right? But I think the newer versions of the JVM and the new versions of Kotlin together are wonderful, right? Really, really amazing potential. Remember, to me, the JVM is the gold, right? That's the gold that you get when you use Java, is the Java virtual machine. That piece of infrastructure is worth billions of dollars in terms of R&D and energy spent over the last 25 years from countless contributors from all around the world. There's nothing like it. It is one of the most advanced pieces of software in the world. And so that's gold. And it doesn't matter what syntax we use to compile to bytecode, as long as we compile to bytecode, right? That JVM is magic. I mean, it is amazing. And I will never, did you know that Java is actually very energy efficient? I mean, these are the things that people don't really appreciate about Java, but Java, it's among the most efficient ways to write code. If you want to worry about your climate impact, right? If you want to worry about how much energy your data centers are spending and pollutants that it's putting into the ozone, Java is up there with C and Rust and C++ and ADA, right? Very, very efficient, right? Super efficient. I mean, that's crazy. We don't do anything to our code. We just run on top of the JVM, and suddenly we get this very efficient experience for free, right? What about ARM, right? ARM, the new chipset from Apple, the Apple Silicon Max, the ARM is now becoming very popular and it's very energy efficient, right? And so you can write your code and it just works on ARM already, right? It works for free. All you got to do is run it. And there's ARM chips in Amazon already. You can use AMIs that have ARM support, and those are energy efficient as well. So I just love the JVM. And so when it comes to the Java language, people will always use that. That's fine. But even if they don't, they'll always use the JVM, right? And that's what's, I think, the most important part. I don't think we'll ever get rid of Java, and I don't want to get rid of Java because Java is part of the JVM, and the JVM is a gift. It's a treasure
for the humanity. Yeah, I totally agree. And speaking of the JVM, what would you think, or what would you how do you see the Gravium? The Grail VM, or how I don't know how to pronounce it.
Yeah, that's right. That's how
okay, the one the Oracle again created.
Yeah. Well, this is an interesting situation, right? I love Gravium, but first of all, it's not Java, right? It's Java is the Java write once, run anywhere, right? That's the promise of Java. When you use Gravium, you're using something that is different, right? It has to it gives you the promise that if you create a closed world ecosystem, where you limit all the dynamic behavior in your Java application, then you get much smaller memory footprints and much faster startup times. And I think that's going to be very useful in a lot of circumstances, a lot of cases. So I can't wait to see what happens there. I think Gravium is a wonderful technology. Spring has really good support for Gravium. So we have this project called Spring Growl, and you can use it to create native images out of your Spring Boot applications. And our priority has been on enabling Gravium not just for the new stuff, not just the new reactive APIs and serverless and all that, but especially for the older applications. Remember, Spring is close to 2 decades old. There are a lot of applications out there, a ton of applications out there that would benefit from Gravium if we can make it work for those. So that's what we have done. So you can write Gravium, you can use Spring and compile your Hibernate and servlet-based applications, these very inefficient technology stacks. You can compile those to Gravium. And now imagine the opportunity that you get when you do this, right? You get very, very low footprint, services. You can now really, really dramatically reduce your data center costs because of the energy consumption and so on. I mean, there's a huge opportunity there. So I'm very excited about that. But one thing to keep in mind is that I misspoke. Oracle announced Project Layden. And Layden is pretty interesting. It is supposed to be basically a native image format for the JVM, right? So basically, Oracle Labs works on Gravium, but that's not the same team as works on Java itself, right? So you've got Oracle and you've got Oracle Labs. Oracle Labs works on Grau, and then Oracle works on Java. And right now, these are two different teams, two different efforts, not necessarily integrated together, right? So what I'm hoping is that Project Layden will result in something like the Gravium native image builder being in the JDK. Unfortunately, that effort has only just recently begun. It is not. It's not a very old effort at all. So it will be, I think, years before we see the native image capabilities in Java, in the JVM, in OpenJDK, out of the box. But either way, it is clear to me the future is going to have native images in it, right? And then that will be Java, right? That'll be the new thing. And I can't wait. I'm really excited. I can't wait to use Java 17 with Loom and Project Panama for native images. For native integration and all this nice syntax, and then use something like Gravium. It's gonna be amazing. So good stuff.
Wow! So we're gonna have the option, the availability of selecting the VMs within the Spring.
What do you mean?
So we're gonna have the chance of the configuration to choose which VM we would like to work on.
I mean, you can do that right now, right? You can use Java. You can use Spring on any virtual machine, as long as it supports Java 8 or later. It doesn't matter, right?
Okay. Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
You can use it with Gravium. You can use it with OpenJDK, with AWS's JDK, with Azure's JDK, etc. Right? But what I'm saying is, soon you'll have this option to either do native images using OpenJDK or using Gravium, right? So the native images, the static binary images that you get when you use the native image builder from Gravium, that option will soon be part of the JDK. Well, not soon, but in a few years, or something like this. So that's very, very exciting, I think.
Yeah, sure. I would like to talk a little bit about the reactive Spring and the reactive APIs of the Spring. How do you evaluate the progress that the reactive Spring did with you and your design or the team of you? Is it gonna be somewhere in the future that we don't name the Spring as it is, but as reactive Spring? So we will use the Spring word, the Spring, for the reactive Spring actually. That time, how would you see that, or is it gonna be happen?
I'm not sure. Are you saying that
we skip? I mean we Spring will be obsolete, and every Java architect or every Java engineer start with the project with the Spring.io, and the main framework comes out of the box. It will be this reactive Spring. That's what I would like to ask.
No. Okay, I see what you're saying. So I don't think that will ever happen. We don't want to break our existing users, but for applications where they have 3 main concerns, then I hope they'll consider reactive. When I say reactive, all we are talking about is a style of programming that is supported in an ecosystem, right? And so that's not a single framework or single technology. It's a style of programming that is supported through Spring Boot and Spring Cloud and Spring Data and Spring Integration and Spring Batch and so on. So the different technologies are, those will always have support for reactive programming, but they won't. I don't think we're going to ever get rid of the existing support. That would make no sense. And remember, you can use Spring and the non-reactive style and do good things, right? It's possible to scale as well, but you can scale with that. I mean, it's clear that lots of people have been able to run and deploy software in production at scale with non-reactive APIs. But if you're building services where there's a lot of network I/O, then reactive programming becomes very useful because it gives you very, very good scalability. It gives you tools to make your software more robust. That is to say, when something happens or fails, you have a toolkit there to handle those failures, right? Because that's guaranteed at scale, things will fail, right? And then finally, it gives you a toolkit to make life easier when it comes to composition of different APIs. It allows you to integrate different sources of data and compose them in a way that makes sense. Whereas without reactive APIs, it's a lot more difficult. You have a lot of different things that you have to think about. You have to integrate yourself, right?
Yeah, thank you very much. And I know we spend the time a little bit, but I'm gonna ask another question. The colonization of the space is being talked in over the youth especially. So I'm just curious about when the humanity create or establish a colony in the Mars. So are we going to use Java on Mars as well?
I sure hope so. I mean, I don't know what else is already being used on Mars. You should know that, right? It's Mars Rover is using Java. So
that's great. So already started with using the Java. Okay.
And that was a long time ago too. We were using Java on Mars. It's got to be a long time, more than 10 years ago. Was it 20 years ago? It's a long time. Mars Rover, Java. So I forget when it actually happened. 2010, right? I think it was 2010, or no, something like a long time ago, right? We had oh, here we go. I found an article here on CNET. Let's see, 2004. We have a remote controlled Mars rover that uses Java, right? So
wow.
That's 16 years ago. So Java makes a lot of sense. It's fast, it's reliable, it integrates with lots of different things. So I would expect that we would see it there, unless a much better language comes around, but I don't think it will. I mean, why would it?
Did you that's the last question now. Did you ever think to create a brand new language from scratch?
Me? No. Yeah. I love programming languages, but I do not think that they are the difference between a good, they don't, they're not the thing that I feel like gives me the biggest benefit, right? If I want to be successful in a technology organization, the programming language doesn't make the difference, right? I like Kotlin. I think Kotlin is stylistically very nice. I love that it can run on old versions of the JVM. I love that it supports coroutines, but it's not a huge order of magnitude difference between Java and Kotlin, right? They are both very productive, very nice languages. So I've never felt the need to build my own programming language because it doesn't make that big a difference. If you take an engineer and teach her or him how to be good collaborators, how to be good how to do communication, that will have a much bigger impact than giving them a different programming language. If you teach an engineer and teach her or him how to think about production, how to write software that is designed for deployment in the cloud, that will have a much bigger impact than teaching him or her a brand new programming language, right? So languages to me that's not the reason that people are successful. It's a part of it, of course, right? I'm not saying that Java is the same as COBOL or something like that. It's not. Obviously, Java is more productive, but it's not so much that I, Josh, feel like there's a huge gap, that needs to be filled.
Yeah, I see. Then I give the word to Oytun.
And I have one more question for the closure part. And we know that you really get used to prepare and present very useful tips and tricks videos on several topics via sharing your screen and hands-on sessions and so on. But today, since we are having we are not having a video material or screen share material here, I would like to ask you for a few words suggestion for the developers who work on projects, which are commonly tight scheduled and are having difficulties to manage things to have their tasks to be finished on time. And mostly we are skipping the most important parts for me, the most important parts like security and the performance things in the backend projects, and also following new trends, technology evolutions, and how do you suggest, what you suggest to the developers who work in such kind of tight scheduled projects and follow new technologies and not to skip the most important parts of the applications that are mostly skipped?
I'm not trying to understand the question. That you're saying, what do I suggest that developers who are trying to meet deadlines learn?
No, not you know that they are trying to meet deadlines, but they are mostly skipping the most important parts, like the performance queries or the security things during the developments, and following the trends, the new evaluation technologies, and so on, because it's very hard to follow these kind of things during the daily routines. So.
Right.
I just want to get your suggestions about how to manage all these things as a developer during the daily routine.
Well, through consistency comes velocity. So there are a lot of concerns when you move to microservices, especially, right? If you have this movement to microservices, there are a lot of responsibilities that every application has. A lot of technological concerns, right? But we call those undifferentiated heavy lifting, right? That is to say, it's hard work that you have to do that does not change the business outcome, right? So these are, you might have also heard these called, what is it? What's the other term? There's another term for it, I forget. But these are things that it's so easy for us to say, oh, well, that's not important, and so I will wait until the very end. That's not going to work. Obviously, you need to care about these things, obviously, but it's very hard to rebuild all this stuff from scratch. This is why the really advanced users of Spring have taken the Spring capability for auto configuration and used that to develop Spring Boot starters that automatically set up things like security, that set up things like observability, that set up things like any kind of infrastructure that your applications will need that are the same from one application to the other. This allows organizations to go faster. They have a consistent prototype. They have a consistent way to go to start.spring.io. And by the way, you can also set up your own start.spring.io. Start.spring.io is open source software. You can deploy that and have your own organizational Spring initializer. And you can go to that Spring initializer and have your own organizational Spring Boot starters that automatically get added. So now, maybe your organization uses an OAuth identity provider. Now, when they go to your organization's start.spring.io, it can pre-generate everything that's required to connect to that in a consistent way. So now security is already handled for you, right? You can also add in observability for integration with operations, right? You can add in smart configuration for Kubernetes so that automatically liveness and readiness probes and Docker images and all that stuff is just pre-configured the way you wanted out of the box. So now the only thing they have to worry about is building the software that matters for the business. It's the thing that the business, the customer is paying for, right? The thing that helps make the software worth building. And obviously that's a lot of work. That's still a lot of work, but at least you can focus on that. And then when it comes to learning new things, obviously I think learning is very important. Learning new things is very important. A lot of organizations, they have this idea of 20% time, right? I think that's a pretty neat idea. Not every organization can do this, but the idea behind 20% time is you give people 20% of the week to work on whatever they want. They can develop new things, they can learn new things, they can try stuff out, and that keeps people, first of all, it keeps their mind from becoming too focused on one thing, right? You don't want to be too focused because otherwise you lose the ability to see the larger picture. But it also gives you time to let your imagination work, right? It actually makes you more productive for the other 80% of the time when you're working on the software because your mind is able to expand. Another thing that people do to learn, to always be learning, is to do pair programming. With pair programming, you learn through collaboration, right? Maybe you have a strength in server-side Spring and some other person has a strength in building client-side React applications. Well, if you pair program, then maybe you can work on the new React application together and you can learn from this other person. And that way you can increase your skills while also not wasting time, right? Because you're sitting next to somebody who knows how to proceed. So you're not sitting there spending hours Googling when you've already got somebody who already knows how to do it. Same thing for operations, right? Maybe you want to build an application and you want to get it deployed to Kubernetes. So you can pair program with somebody who knows Kubernetes. This way, there's no wasted time, right? You're not sitting there just going, oh, I don't know what to do. Do I check Stack Overflow, scratch my head? What do I do, right? That doesn't happen. Also, because there's somebody else there, you can talk to that person. And talking about the idea, collaborating with somebody can really help your thought process, right? Remember that the brain learns things differently for different people, right? Some people are visual. Some people are they need to hear their audio. They learn through audio, right? Some people can just look at it and read it and read the text in their mind and kind of understand what they're doing. But however you learn, it can be very helpful to partner with somebody else. And maybe if you don't understand it, maybe the process of trying to explain it with your voice will actually make your brain understand something, right? So that's a very useful thing as well, is to pair program. Maybe you don't pair program all the time, but for new things where you're trying to explore a new idea, pair programming can be absolutely amazing. It's fast. It's much cheaper than letting somebody just wander by themselves for several days trying to learn something, right? So I encourage people to do that as well. And then when it comes to integrating all that stuff, I'm hoping that Spring has done 90% of the integrations for you. So if you're learning something new and you want to pull something into Spring, into your application framework, it should not be that painful because Spring is already doing the rest of the work, right? So then you just need to integrate that one last piece. Hopefully that frees you up to learn the things that you want to learn as opposed to having to learn everything each time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. As you mentioned, there are lots of things to learn because the technology is evolution every day, and each day is not every day is a little bit ahead of yesterday. So we are also following some methodologies to just split the tasks or split the new technology learnings within the team, and we try to, as you mentioned, make some pair programmings or some developing some POCs and share the knowledge with the others, because there is no time for everyone for learning everything. So the knowledge sharing is, I think, the key point here. Thanks for your suggestions as well. We will try to also follow up with your suggestions as well.
Awesome.
Yeah. And so we said like half of an hour, but it's almost 50 minutes till the start. So thanks for your time and being with us today with this podcast. And hope to see you again. Hope to meet in another live event or podcast recordings. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much for having me. It was a fun conversation, and good luck to everybody. And I hope we can talk again soon.
We will also share the link when it is published with you. So it will be published on Spotify, and then we will be happily to share the link with you as well.
Please, thank you. I will share it out with my audience.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, probably I will share with Beth, and then we'll inform you. Thanks again, Josh, for your kind acceptance and discussion and talk, and that was fun. That was my first podcast, and it was a great honor to do that with you guys. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I had a lot of fun.
Yeah, thanks. So bye-bye.
Have a great day, Josh. Thank you.
You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.